Chapter 1: The Accidental Flame, Early Hominids, and the Discovery of Fire. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and fear. A bolt of lightning, sharp and sudden, had ripped through the prehistoric sky, striking a gnarled oak with a sound like a splitting mountain. Smoke billowed, acrid and foreign, and then a flickering orange tongue began to lick at the dry undergrowth. Our early ancestors, Homo erectus and later Neanderthals, were creatures of instinct, driven by the immediate demands of survival. They knew the bite of cold, the gnawing ache of hunger, and the constant threat of predators. Fire, in its raw, untamed form, was a terrifying force. They observed how fire consumed dry leaves, how it crackled through branches. They would tend to naturally occurring fires, keeping them alive for as long as possible by adding fuel, dry twigs, fallen leaves. This required a certain level of cooperative effort. Someone had to be designated as the firekeeper, ensuring the precious flame didn't die out. This communal responsibility would have fostered early forms of social organization and communication. They saw how a gust of wind could fan a spark into a flame, and how rain could extinguish it. Raw meat is tough, difficult to chew, and carries parasites. Instead of tearing at it raw, they would have placed pieces of it near the fire, observing the transformation. The sizzling fat, the rising steam, the change in color and texture. These were the first culinary experiments, the rudimentary beginnings of gastronomy. Cooked meat, however, is tenderized, making nutrients more accessible. It was the first step on a long and winding journey, from foraging for survival to savoring a gourmet meal. This seemingly simple act of cooking would profoundly alter human society, biology, and culture, setting us on a path towards an unimaginable future. The heat breaks down complex molecules, making digestion easier and more efficient. This meant more energy, less time spent chewing, and potentially a significant boost in brain development. The very act of cooking began to shape our biology. They scattered, their rudimentary minds struggling to process the chaotic energy. Homo erectus, in particular, is credited with significant advancements in fire control. Archaeological sites reveal hearths, designated areas for fire, indicating a more deliberate and consistent engagement. But curiosity, that most human of traits, was a persistent whisper. Firstly, warmth. The ability to stay warm through cold nights, to venture into colder climates, expanded their habitable zones significantly. Secondly, protection. Fire served as a formidable deterrent to predators, allowing them to sleep more securely. Thirdly, light. The flickering glow extended their active hours beyond daylight, allowing for tool-making, social interaction, and planning. Imagine the countless hours spent experimenting, rubbing sticks together, striking stones against each other. These were not intuitive actions. The first successful fire starting would have been the result of immense trial and error, perhaps even accidental friction during the shaping of tools. Days later, a braver individual, perhaps driven by the need for warmth in the increasingly chilly evenings, cautiously approached the smoldering remains of the lightning-struck tree. The ground was warm, a welcome respite from the biting cold. A charred branch lay nearby, still faintly radiating heat. This was not a deliberate act of discovery, but an accidental encounter. Imagine the scene: a small group huddled together, shivering. One of them, perhaps a juvenile, might have picked up a small, still warm ember. It would have been an object of fascination, a source of mild discomfort, but also a novel sensation. The ability to endure slightly higher temperatures, even for a short period, would have been a significant evolutionary advantage. The real breakthrough, however, was in the observation of its effects. A small animal, perhaps a rodent, caught in the blaze would have been cooked. The scent, initially unfamiliar, would have been different from raw flesh. Driven by hunger, someone, perhaps tentatively, would have picked at the cooked remains. The texture would have been softer, easier to chew. The taste, surprisingly, less gamey, more appealing. This was the primordial seed of culinary understanding. The process of controlling fire, however, was a monumental leap. It wasn't a single event, but a gradual, iterative process, spanning millennia. Initially, their interaction with fire was opportunistic. The shift from merely maintaining fire to actively creating it was a paradigm shift. The earliest evidence of controlled fire use dates back almost 2 million years, though systematic use is more firmly established around 400,000 years ago. The impact of controlled fire was immediate and profound. But the most revolutionary impact, the one that lays the foundation for our story, was on food. Imagine the early communal meals. A freshly hunted animal, perhaps a deer or a wild boar, brought back to the camp. The accidental flame had ignited not just a fire, but a revolution. Chapter 2. Roasting and Baking. The simplest transformations with fire firmly established as a tool for survival. The focus shifted to its application in food preparation. The most intuitive methods were, naturally, the simplest: roasting and baking. These techniques required minimal additional technology, relying primarily on the direct application of heat. The intense heat would quickly sear the exterior, creating a protective crust, while gradually cooking the interior. This open-fire roasting was efficient, quick, and required little in the way of sophisticated equipment. Imagine a group of early humans gathered around a flickering fire, the air filled with the scent of wood smoke and anticipation. This led to the development of rudimentary spits, sharpened sticks, or branches used to suspend meat over the flames. Placing them directly into the hot ash of a dying fire would have slowly softened them, converting complex starches into more digestible sugars. These are essentially pits dug into the ground, lined with stones, where a fire would be built to heat the stones. It was particularly effective for larger cuts of meat or for communal meals, allowing food to cook slowly over many hours, producing tender and flavorful results. The steam trapped within the enclosed space would also have contributed to a moist final product. Once the stones were sufficiently hot, the embers would be raked out. They would have learned which cuts of meat were best for roasting, and which roots benefited most from slow baking. This nascent culinary knowledge, passed down through generations, formed the bedrock of human cuisine. The simple acts of roasting and baking laid the foundation for all subsequent culinary innovations, transforming mere sustenance into an act of creation and communal celebration. And food, wrapped in leaves, clay, or simply placed directly on the hot stones, would be placed inside. The pit would then be covered with earth or more hot stones, trapping the heat and allowing the food to slow cook. The earthy aroma of roasted roots would have become a familiar and comforting smell, allowing for more even cooking and easier turning. Imagine a thick branch, impaled through a carcass, rotating slowly over the glowing coals. Roasting a large animal on a spit or baking food in an earth oven would have been a collective endeavor. It required cooperation, coordination, and the sharing of resources and labor. This would have strengthened social bonds, reinforcing tribal structures and fostering a sense of community. The act of sharing cooked food around a fire would have become a powerful ritual, a fundamental aspect of human social interaction. This would have been a communal effort, requiring someone to periodically turn the spit, ensuring uniform exposure to the heat. Cooking significantly reduced the risk of parasitic infections common in raw meat. Secondly, digestibility. The breakdown of proteins and carbohydrates made food easier to chew and absorb, leading to more efficient nutrient uptake. This freed up energy that would otherwise be spent on digestion, potentially contributing to brain development and cognitive function. Thirdly, taste. The Maillard reaction, a chemical process responsible for the browning and flavor development in cooked food, would have created new and appealing aromas and tastes, making food more palatable and desirable. A hunter returns with a fresh kill, perhaps a rabbit or a bird. This fat, rich in calories, would not have been wasted. The concept of baking involves cooking food by dry heat, usually in an enclosed space. The simplest form of baking would have been placing food directly onto hot stones or in shallow pits covered with hot embers and ash. It could have been used to grease other foods or even consumed directly, providing much-needed energy in a hunter-gatherer diet. Instead of immediately tearing into the raw flesh, they now possess the knowledge of fire's transformative power. The earliest form of roasting would have involved simply placing pieces of meat, or even whole, small animals directly onto or very close to the embers. Observations would have quickly led to refinements. They would have noticed that meat placed too close would char and burn, while meat too far away would remain raw. The development of the spit also allowed for the collection of dripping fat. Baking, while seemingly more complex, likely emerged in parallel. Consider the early attempts at cooking root vegetables. Many root vegetables, like wild yams or tubers, are fibrous and difficult to digest raw. Evidence for early baking includes the discovery of earth ovens or pit ovens at archaeological sites. This method provided a more consistent and controlled cooking environment than open-fire roasting. The benefits of roasting and baking were numerous. Firstly, safety. The communal aspect of these early cooking methods is also crucial. As these techniques became more refined, so too did the understanding of different food properties. Chapter 3. Boiling and Stewing. The emergence of containers while roasting and baking were effective for solid foods. A significant hurdle remained: how to cook liquids, or how to cook foods in liquid. This challenge spurred one of the most significant technological advancements in early human history: the development of containers. Imagine the limitations of a pre-container world. Any attempt to cook watery foods or to tenderize tough meats through prolonged simmering was impossible. Picture a hollow in the ground, lined with animal hides, large leaves, or even a naturally occurring rock depression. Water would be poured in, and then stones that had been heated in a fire would be carefully transferred into the water using sticks or tongs. The stones would release their heat, gradually bringing the water to a boil. The precise origins of pottery are debated, but it emerged independently in various parts of the world, with some of the earliest examples dating back over 18,000 years. This led to the widespread adoption of stewing as a primary cooking method. This gentle, moist heat breaks down tough fibers in meat and vegetables, making them incredibly tender and flavorful. It also allows for the blending of flavors, as different ingredients release their essences into the liquid, creating complex and satisfying meals. The ability to shape clay, fire it at high temperatures, and create durable, heat-resistant vessels transformed cooking. This method, known as stone boiling, is surprisingly effective and was practiced by various indigenous cultures around the world. With a more stable food supply from cultivated crops and domesticated animals, there was less need for constant foraging and hunting. These methods not only expanded the range of edible foods, but also fostered community, improved health, and laid the foundations for the complex and diverse cuisines that would emerge in the millennia to come. This freed up time for more elaborate food preparation, and the ability to cook grains and store surplus food became crucial for supporting larger, more permanent settlements. Inside, a rich stew simmers, chunks of meat, wild roots, foraged greens, and perhaps some early cultivated grains. The aroma would have been intoxicating, a comforting scent of sustenance and community. It allowed for more efficient food storage, reducing waste and providing a buffer against lean times. It facilitated the sharing of food, as large pots of stew could feed many individuals. It also encouraged experimentation with different ingredients and flavor combinations, laying the groundwork for more sophisticated culinary traditions. The ingenuity of our ancestors, however, found ways around this. These methods allowed for the extraction of nutrients from otherwise indigestible or difficult to process foods, such as bones and certain plant materials. Secondly, preservation. Boiling could be used to sterilize water, making it safer to drink. Stews, especially those with high salt content, could be preserved for longer periods, an early form of food storage. Thirdly, palatability. Boiling and stewing transformed tough, raw ingredients into soft, flavorful, and easily digestible meals, significantly improving the quality of life. The earliest forms of boiling likely involved heating water with hot stones. Tough cuts of meat, which were difficult to chew when roasted, could be simmered for hours, becoming incredibly tender. Bones, previously discarded, could be boiled to extract marrow and nutrients, creating rich, flavorful broths. This was an essential step towards maximizing the nutritional yield from every part of an animal. This innovation was revolutionary. It allowed for the preparation of broths and stews, unlocking a whole new range of nutrients. The ability to create broths also allowed for the cooking of grains and pulses. As humans transitioned from a purely hunter-gatherer existence to more settled agricultural practices, cereals like wild wheat and barley became increasingly important. Boiling was the primary method for making these grains digestible and palatable. Imagine the first porridges, simple mixtures of boiled grains and water, perhaps flavored with herbs or dried berries. The development of pottery marked another monumental leap. With pottery, stone boiling became obsolete. Pots could be placed directly over or beside a fire, allowing for much more efficient and controlled heating of liquids. Stewing involves simmering ingredients in liquid over an extended period. Imagine a scene around a Neolithic settlement. A large clay pot, blackened with soot, bubbles gently over a fire. The benefits of boiling and stewing were profound. Firstly, nutrient extraction. The emergence of containers, particularly pottery, also had significant social implications. The transition to settled agricultural communities, which began around 10,000 BCE, further accelerated the adoption of boiling and stewing. From the simple act of dropping hot stones into a hide-lined pit to the crafting of durable clay pots. The journey of boiling and stewing highlights humanity's persistent ingenuity in the face of culinary challenges. Chapter 4: Fermentation and Preservation, Extending the Feast. As early human societies became more settled and agricultural practices flourished, a new challenge emerged: how to manage surplus food. The feast or famine cycle of hunter-gatherer life was gradually being replaced by periods of abundance. But without effective preservation methods, much of this bounty would spoil. This necessity gave rise to one of the most fascinating and transformative culinary discoveries: fermentation. Fermentation, at its core, is a biological process where microorganisms convert carbohydrates into alcohol, gases, or organic acids. While the science behind it was unknown to early humans, they observed its effects. The earliest evidence of beer production dates back to around 7000 BCE in what is now Iran, with wine emerging slightly later in the Caucasus region. Sauerkraut, kimchi, and various pickled vegetables would have provided essential vitamins and minerals during winter months when fresh produce was scarce. Meat, fish, and fruits could be laid out in the sun or hung in smoky shelters to remove moisture, thereby inhibiting microbial growth. Imagine strips of venison or fish dried to a leathery texture, providing a portable and long-lasting food source for hunters or travelers. The lactic acid produced during fermentation acts as a natural preservative, inhibiting the growth of spoilage, causing bacteria. The alcohol acted as an antiseptic, and the fermentation process itself eliminated many harmful bacteria. The ability to produce and store these beverages also had significant social implications, playing a role in rituals, celebrations, and even early forms of trade. They were the product of careful observation, accidental discovery, and generations of accumulated wisdom. Each successful batch of fermented beer, each perfectly dried fish, was a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. These methods extended the feast, transformed raw ingredients into complex flavors, and laid the groundwork for the culinary diversity that defines human civilization today. The ability to store surplus food meant less reliance on immediate foraging and hunting. It allowed for the development of more complex trade networks, as preserved goods could be transported over longer distances. It also provided food security, reducing the impact of droughts, famines, and other environmental calamities. Early humans would have learned to cure fish or meat by packing them in salt or brining them in concentrated saltwater solutions. This allowed for the storage of large quantities of protein, crucial for sustaining growing populations. Imagine early farmers cultivating grains like barley or wild grapes. Meat and fish hung over a slow, smoldering fire would absorb compounds from the smoke, which acted as antimicrobials and antioxidants, extending shelf life while imparting a distinct, savory taste. A simple mash of grain and water, left exposed to wild yeasts, would begin to ferment, producing a slightly alcoholic, nutritious, and surprisingly palatable drink. Similarly, crushed grapes, with their natural sugars and yeasts, would transform into wine. Villages and later towns could only sustain larger populations if they could reliably feed themselves throughout the year. Even when harvests were not optimal, perhaps a forgotten batch of fruit mash bubbled and transformed into a mildly intoxicating liquid, or raw milk, left in a warm place, thickened and soured into a tangy, more digestible product. But ancient cultures, particularly nomadic pastoralists, discovered that by allowing milk to ferment, it transformed into yogurt, kefir, or cheese. These products not only lasted longer, but were also often more digestible for many adults due to the breakdown of lactose. The tangy flavor and different textures would have been a welcome addition to their diets. These accidental discoveries, replicated and refined through trial and error, led to an explosion of fermented foods and beverages. The most iconic fermented beverages were beer and wine. These beverages were not merely recreational, they were sources of calories and nutrients, and crucially, they were safer to drink than often contaminated water. Beyond beverages, fermentation revolutionized food preservation. Lactic acid fermentation, in particular, was key. Consider dairy. Fresh milk spoils quickly. Vegetables also benefited from fermentation, the practice of pickling, where vegetables are submerged in brine and allowed to ferment, likely emerged independently in various cultures. Beyond fermentation, other preservation techniques also evolved. Drying was perhaps the most ancient and intuitive. Salting was another powerful method. Salt, a precious commodity in many ancient societies, drew moisture out of food and created an inhospitable environment for bacteria. Smoking, often combined with drying, added another layer of preservation and flavor. The impact of these preservation methods was immense. They fundamentally altered human, economic, and social structures. The transition from a nomadic existence to settled agricultural communities was inextricably linked to these advancements in food preservation. The discovery of fermentation and the refinement of preservation techniques were not the result of scientific inquiry in the modern sense. Chapter 5: The Dawn of Agriculture and Culinary Specialization. The millennia following the widespread adoption of agriculture witnessed an unprecedented transformation in human society, and consequently in how people cooked. With a more stable food supply, populations grew, settlements became permanent, and new technologies emerged, leading to increasing culinary specialization and complexity. The agricultural revolution, which began roughly 10,000 BCE, had been a slow burn, but by 2000 BCE, its effects were fully realized across many parts of the world. Prior to this, grains were often consumed as whole kernels, boiled into porridges, or roughly ground between stones. As agriculture intensified, so did the need for more efficient ways to process grain into flour. They would have access to large, communal ovens, capable of producing bread in quantities far exceeding what a single household could manage. Bronze, and later iron, replaced stone and clay for many implements. Metal pots and pans, while expensive, offered superior heat conduction and durability. As trade routes expanded, exotic spices from distant lands, cinnamon, pepper, cumin, coriander, began to appear in the kitchens of the wealthy, adding new dimensions of flavor and complexity to dishes. Banquets and feasts became important social and political events, showcasing wealth and power through elaborate culinary displays. The development of multiple courses, complex sauces, and decorative presentations began to differentiate the meals of the elite from the simple sustenance of the common person. The accidental discoveries of earlier millennia were now systematically applied and innovated upon. The foundations of modern culinary practices were laid. The milling of grains, the baking of bread, the specialization of labor, the trade of ingredients, and the emergence of distinct regional cuisines. From the simple act of putting food to fire, humanity had progressed to a point where cooking was not just about survival, but about culture, identity, and enjoyment. The boring history of how people learned to cook was becoming a rich tapestry of human experience. The desire for these spices would later fuel empires and global exploration. Knives, spatulas, and other utensils became more refined, allowing for more precise preparation and presentation of food. This specialization meant higher quality products and a consistent supply for the growing urban populace. Different regions, influenced by their unique agricultural products, climates, and cultural preferences, developed distinct cooking styles. The Mediterranean diet, for example, with its emphasis on olives, grains, legumes, and fish, began to solidify. In Asia, rice-based cuisines and the use of soy products emerged. Handcorns, simple flat stones with a smaller stone used to grind, became common. This allowed for the production of finer flours, opening the door to a whole new range of baked goods. Staple crops, like wheat, barley, rice, millet, and maize, were widely cultivated. Certain foods became sacred or forbidden, shaping dietary practices and culinary traditions. The preparation of food for religious ceremonies would have required specific knowledge and specialized techniques. Domesticated animals, cattle, sheep, goats, chickens, provided not just meat, but also milk, eggs, and labor. With larger populations concentrated in cities, specialized trades emerged. No longer did every household have to be self-sufficient in food preparation. Bakers, brewers, butchers, and later, even professional cooks, began to appear. This division of labor allowed for the development of more sophisticated techniques and diverse culinary offerings. This steady supply of raw ingredients fueled culinary innovation. One of the most significant developments was the refinement of milling. Imagine the experimentation: fine flour mixed with water, perhaps some wild yeast, baked on hot stones or in rudimentary ovens. This led to the development of leavened bread, a staple that would define countless cultures. The Egyptians, for example, were masters of bread making, with evidence suggesting they were baking leavened bread as early as 3000 BCE. The distinctive aroma of baking bread, a comforting and universal smell, would have become a hallmark of settled life. The rise of urban centers also played a crucial role. Consider the role of the baker in ancient Mesopotamia or Egypt. The development of more advanced cooking vessels and tools also progressed. The concept of cuisine in the modern sense began to take shape. Spices and herbs, previously gathered wild, became commodities of trade. Social stratification also impacted culinary practices. The wealthy would have access to a wider variety of ingredients, including rare meats, imported spices, and labor-intensive preparations. Religious beliefs and rituals also intertwined with food. Sacrifices of animals, often followed by communal feasting, were common in many ancient religions. The period from 2000 BCE to 500 BCE was a time of consolidation and refinement in the history of cooking. Chapter 6: Roman Feasts and Global Encounters. Culinary Expansion. The era from 500 BCE to 500 CE witnessed the rise and fall of empires, significant technological advancements, and the expansion of trade networks across vast distances. These developments profoundly impacted how people cooked, leading to greater culinary sophistication, cross-cultural influences, and the spread of new ingredients and techniques. The Roman Empire stands as a prime example of culinary expansion during this period. They used metal cooking vessels, elaborate molds for shaping food, and various utensils. The concept of a professional chef became more established. Often slaves or freedmen who were highly skilled and commanded respect. Cookbooks, like Apicius's Diarii Coquinaria, provide fascinating insights into Roman culinary practices, detailing recipes for elaborate dishes, complex sauces, and intricate preparations. The use of ghee, lentils, and a wide variety of vegetables and grains formed complex and flavorful dishes. Maize, cultivated in the Americas for millennia, formed the basis of the diets of the Maya and later the Aztec civilizations. The development of more efficient ovens, improved milling techniques, and better understanding of food preservation methods contributed to culinary progress. The concept of adding leavening agents beyond natural yeast, though not fully understood, continued to evolve, leading to lighter and more varied breads. They developed sophisticated methods for processing maize, including mixed, which improved its nutritional value and allowed for the creation of tortillas and tamales. The concept of balancing flavors and medicinal properties of food was deeply ingrained in their culinary philosophy. The Romans, inheriting much from the Greeks and Etruscans, took food and dining to new heights of extravagance and organization. Their military campaigns and vast trade routes brought an unprecedented array of ingredients to their tables, from spices like pepper and saffron from the East to exotic fruits and vegetables from across their empire. Roman chefs had a rich palate to work with. Roman soldiers and administrators brought their foodways to the furthest reaches of the empire, influencing local diets. Similarly, the diverse populations within their empire contributed their own ingredients and techniques to the Roman culinary melting pot. The movement of people, whether as traders, migrants, or slaves, invariably carried culinary knowledge with them. In China, the Han Dynasty saw the development of sophisticated cooking techniques, including stir-frying, steaming, and became an integral part of culture, social status, and economic activity. The foundations of regional cuisines that we recognize today were being laid, shaped by indigenous ingredients, evolving technologies, and the ever-increasing interconnectedness of the human world. The boring history was becoming a vibrant tapestry of flavors and traditions, a testament to humanity's continuous quest for better, more diverse, and more enjoyable ways to eat. And braising, driven by the availability of woks and bamboo steamers, the cultivation of rice, and the domestication of pigs and chickens formed the backbone of Chinese cuisine. The use of soy sauce, vinegar, and various fermented bean pastes provided a complex flavor profile. Trade along the Silk Road introduced new ingredients and culinary ideas between East and West. Roman kitchens, particularly in wealthy households, were well equipped and specialized. Imagine a Roman banquet, multiple courses, often featuring surprising combinations of sweet and savory, dormice stuffed with nuts and honey, rich stews flavored with garum, roast boar with fruit sauces, and elaborate pastries. The emphasis was often on spectacle and variety, showcasing the host's wealth and access to exotic ingredients. Dining became a central social event, a display of status, and a forum for political discourse. Beyond Rome, other significant culinary traditions were evolving. In India, the Vedic period and subsequent empires refined a diverse vegetarian and non-vegetarian culinary tradition, heavily reliant on a vast array of spices, cumin, coriander, turmeric, cardamom, cloves, and more. The spread of agriculture continued to introduce new staple foods to different regions. Technological advancements, while incremental, were still important. Cross-cultural encounters, often through conquest or trade, led to the exchange of culinary ideas. The transition from 500 BCE to 500 CE marks a period where cooking moved beyond basic sustenance in many societies. Chapter 7. The Medieval Slow Cook, From Castles to Cottages. The 1,000 years spanning the early medieval period to the late Middle Ages, often referred to as the Dark Ages in some Western contexts, but a period of significant development elsewhere, saw cooking continue its slow evolution, marked by both continuity and innovation. Feudalism meant that most people lived in rural communities, relying on local agricultural output. Roasting on spits remained a popular method for meat, often done over open fires. Stewing and boiling in large cauldrons were also prevalent, allowing for the preparation of communal meals. Their homes would have small hearths, and food preparation revolved around basic, often monotonous meals. Villagers would bring their dough to a central bakery to be baked, saving fuel and labor. Christian fasting days, particularly Lent, prohibited meat consumption, leading to the development of elaborate fish dishes and alternative protein sources. Spices from the East, like nutmeg, cloves, and ginger, became more widely available, enriching the flavors of medieval European dishes. New fruits and vegetables, like lemons, oranges, and spinach, gradually made their way west. Monasteries, with their self-sufficient agricultural practices, were often centers of culinary innovation, experimenting with new ways to preserve food and produce beverages like ale and mead. Improved plows and agricultural tools led to greater food yields. Watermills and windmills provided more efficient grain grinding. The development of chimney flues improved ventilation in kitchens, making cooking environments more bearable. The Islamic Golden Age saw immense culinary innovation. It was a time of localized culinary traditions, shaped by necessity, availability, and religious beliefs. But it was also a time when global trade began to re-establish connections, slowly weaving a more diverse tapestry of flavors and ingredients across continents. The slow cook of the medieval kitchen laid the groundwork for the culinary explosions that would follow in the early modern period, including those on agriculture and medicine, which influenced food preparation. The introduction of sugarcane, citrus fruits, and new varieties of rice, along with sophisticated irrigation techniques, led to a rich and diverse cuisine. This highlights the ongoing cooperative nature of food production and preparation in communal settings. Stir-frying became an even more central technique, valued for its speed and ability to preserve the freshness of ingredients. Ingredients were often heavily spiced, though the spices themselves were expensive and a status symbol used by the wealthy. Religious influences and technological shifts. In Europe, the collapse of the Western Roman Empire led to a more decentralized society. Food production and preparation became largely localized. Large kitchens with massive hearths and rudimentary ovens were common. Imagine a medieval castle kitchen bustling with activity, the air thick with smoke and the aroma of roasting meat and simmering stews, preparing vast quantities of food for the Lord, his family, knights, and servants. Feasts, though perhaps less elaborate than their Roman predecessors, were still important social events, featuring multiple courses, often with visually striking presentations, like roasted swans or peacocks with their feathers reattached. Religious observances heavily influenced medieval diets. The Crusades and expanding trade routes played a crucial role in reintroducing new ingredients and culinary ideas to Europe. In China, the Song dynasty saw further culinary refinement, including the widespread use of tea, a greater emphasis on regional specializations, and the development of intricate banquet menus. Technological advancements during this period, while not as dramatic as the discovery of fire or pottery, were significant. The medieval period was a time of both continuity and change in how people cooked. Chapter 8: The Age of Exploration and the Global Kitchen. The period from the 16th to the 18th centuries, known as the Age of Exploration, ushered in a truly global transformation of food and cooking. The voyages of discovery and subsequent colonization efforts fundamentally reshaped diets, introduced entirely new food sources to continents, and created a complex web of culinary exchange that continues to define our modern world. Suddenly, continents that had developed entirely separate culinary traditions were sharing ingredients that would revolutionize their respective foodways. The Columbian Exchange, the widespread transfer of plants, animals, culture, human populations, technology, and ideas between the Americas and the Old World in the 15th and 16th centuries, was perhaps the single most impactful event on global cuisine. Chilies from the Americas spread throughout Asia and Africa, profoundly altering the flavor profiles of Indian, Thai, Chinese, and African cuisines, adding a fiery dimension previously unknown. Imagine the impact of the potato. Originally from the Andes, it traveled to Europe, where it was initially met with suspicion, but eventually became a staple crop, especially in Ireland and Northern Europe, providing a cheap and highly nutritious food source that could feed growing populations. As Europeans established colonies, they brought their cooking methods and preferences, blending them with indigenous ingredients and local customs. This fusion created entirely new cuisines: Creole cuisine in the Caribbean, Latin American cuisines, and the beginnings of what would become American food. Wheat, rice, coffee, and sugarcane, along with domesticated animals like cattle, pigs, chickens, and horses, transformed agriculture and diets in the New World. The widespread use of cast iron cookware provided durable and efficient vessels for cooking. Improved ovens and hearth designs made cooking more controllable. The introduction of coffee and tea and the development of specialized brewing and serving equipment also shaped daily rituals and social interactions around food. French chefs formalized cooking techniques, emphasizing precision, presentation, and the creation of elaborate sauces, while grand feasts remained the purview of the aristocracy. The middle class began to demand more diverse and palatable food for their homes. This spurred the development of more accessible recipes and the professionalization of cooking as a trade outside of noble households. The concept of haute cuisine began to emerge, focused on refined techniques and aesthetic appeal. Cookbooks became more detailed, reflecting a growing interest in systematic culinary knowledge. This marked a crucial step towards the commodification of cooked food and the concept of dining out as a leisure activity, rather than merely for sustenance or hospitality. The introduction of sugarcane, in particular, had a profound and often tragic impact, fueling the demand for slave labor in the Caribbean and the Americas. but also creating a new global commodity and a basis for countless sweets and pastries. Without the potato, the demographics of 18th and 19th century Europe would have been vastly different. Cacao, vanilla, and various types of beans also made their way across the oceans, introducing new flavors and culinary possibilities. It was a period of unprecedented global culinary exchange, where ingredients, techniques, and flavors crisscrossed continents, forever changing the way people ate. The world's kitchens became increasingly interconnected, laying the groundwork for the diverse and globalized food landscape we inhabit today. The boring history was now a thrilling tale of global discovery and delicious transformation. Tomatoes, another New World gift, journeyed to Italy, where they would eventually become inseparable from Italian cuisine, forming the basis of countless sauces and dishes. Maize, originating in Mesoamerica, became a crucial crop in Africa, parts of Europe, and Asia, providing a resilient and high-yielding food source. In return, the Old World sent its culinary treasures to the Americas. This global exchange wasn't just about ingredients, it was about techniques and ideas. In Europe, the age of exploration also led to further culinary refinement, particularly in France, which was beginning its ascent as a center of gastronomic excellence. The rise of the bourgeoisie, a burgeoning middle class, also impacted cooking. Technological advancements during this period, while not revolutionary in the same way as fire or pottery, were significant. The 17th and 18th centuries saw the emergence of the first restaurants in Paris, evolving from taverns and inns that served specific dishes. The age of exploration was a pivotal moment in the history of cooking. Chapter 9: The Industrial Revolution and Culinary Modernization. The 19th century, dominated by the sweeping changes of the Industrial Revolution, brought about a transformation in every aspect of human life, and cooking was no exception. This era saw advancements in food production, preservation, and the kitchen itself, fundamentally altering how food was prepared and consumed. This meant greater availability of certain ingredients, and, for the first time, a shift towards pre-processed and packaged foods. Fresh produce was often scarce or expensive, but canned foods offered a consistent and relatively affordable alternative. While perhaps lacking in freshness, they provided essential nutrients and convenience, particularly for working-class families. Canning, invented in the late 18th century, became widely adopted in the 19th century, particularly after its importance was recognized for feeding armies. The cook, perhaps a professional or the lady of the house, now had more precise control over temperature and cooking methods. This meant a greater variety of fresh produce and meats became available in cities, reducing reliance on local, seasonal ingredients and preserved foods. The concept of a national, and later international, food supply chain began to take shape. Recipes, which had often been vague and reliant on experienced judgment, began to include more precise measurements and instructions, reflecting a more scientific approach to cooking. The understanding of germ theory, albeit rudimentary at first, led to greater emphasis on hygiene in the kitchen and in food handling. The growth of urban populations and industrial labor led to changes in meal patterns. While the wealthy enjoyed an abundance of diverse and often elaborate foods, the working class often subsisted on monotonous diets, high in starches and cheaper cuts of meat, reflecting the economic disparities of the era. Factory workers often had limited time for elaborate meals, leading to the rise of simpler, quicker preparations. From the factory floor to the domestic kitchen, innovations in food production, preservation, and cooking technology transformed daily life. The foundations were laid for the modern food industry and the increasingly convenient, diverse, and interconnected culinary landscape of the 20th century, laying the groundwork for a world where cooking would become both a necessity and an art form, accessible to more people than ever before. These books democratized culinary knowledge, bringing sophisticated techniques and recipes into ordinary homes. The adulteration of food, a rampant problem in previous centuries, slowly began to be addressed through early food safety regulations. Auguste Escoffier, a pivotal figure of the late 19th century, modernized French cuisine, systematizing kitchen organization, codifying recipes, and emphasizing classical techniques. His work laid the foundation for modern fine dining and influenced chefs worldwide. This allowed for the long-term preservation of a variety of foods, from meats and vegetables to fruits, making them available year-round, regardless of season or location. Initially applied to textiles and machinery, soon extended to food processing. Imagine the impact of canned goods on diets, especially in urban centers. The mid-19th century saw the development of mechanical refrigeration, though it wouldn't become widespread in homes until the 20th century, allowing perishable goods to travel further and be stored for longer. Another major innovation was refrigeration. Early forms of refrigeration involved storing ice in insulated ice houses. They also allowed for multiple pots and pans to be heated simultaneously, increasing efficiency. The introduction of gas and later electric stoves by the end of the century further modernized the kitchen, making cooking cleaner, safer, and more convenient. The kitchen itself underwent a revolution. The traditional open hearth began to be replaced by the cast-iron range. Imagine a Victorian kitchen, a gleaming cast-iron range at its heart, radiating warmth. The growth of railroads and steamships facilitated the rapid transport of food from rural producing areas to burgeoning urban centers. Public health concerns also started to influence food preparation. Cookbooks proliferated, reflecting a growing middle class eager to learn new culinary skills and entertain guests. The rise of the professional chef continued, particularly in France. The Industrial Revolution also brought about social changes that impacted food. Despite these advancements, dietary inequalities persisted. The 19th century was a century of profound change in how people cooked. Chapter 10: The Electric Kitchen and Globalized Cuisine. The 20th and early 21st centuries have witnessed an exponential acceleration in culinary change, driven by technological leaps, globalized trade, and a constantly evolving understanding of nutrition and health. The kitchen, once a place of toil, has been transformed by electricity, convenience, and an unprecedented array of ingredients from every corner of the globe. Electric refrigerators, initially luxury items, became ubiquitous, revolutionizing food storage and significantly reducing food waste. The electric stove, offering precise temperature control and cleanliness, largely replaced gas and wood-fired ranges. Small electric appliances, toasters, blenders, mixers, microwaves, emerged. each designed to simplify and speed up specific cooking tasks, catering to increasingly busy lifestyles. Supermarkets, with their vast aisles and self-service model, offered an unimaginable variety of packaged and fresh goods from around the world. Avocados from Mexico, kiwis from New Zealand, coffee from Brazil, and spices from India were no longer exotic luxuries, but everyday items in many grocery stores. This globalization of ingredients led to a further blurring of culinary boundaries and the rise of fusion cuisines. The concept of convenience food exploded. Frozen dinners, instant noodles, pre-cut vegetables, catering to a growing desire for quick and easy meals. Farm-to-table movements, local food initiatives, and vegetarian-vegan diets have gained prominence, reflecting a desire for more mindful and responsible eating. The internet and social media have further democratized culinary knowledge, making recipes, techniques, and food cultures from around the world instantly accessible to anyone with a connection. From the accidental flame that brought warmth and safety, to the earth ovens that yielded tender roots, to the clay pots that simmered nourishing stews, to the global exchange of ingredients that created a kaleidoscope of flavors, and finally to the electric kitchens and instant access of today. Each step has built upon the last, transforming the fundamental act of preparing food into a rich, complex, and endlessly fascinating aspect of human civilization. The boring history of cooking is, in fact, one of humanity's most extraordinary and delicious adventures. Online cooking classes, recipe-sharing platforms, and food photography have become integral parts of the modern culinary landscape. Scientific research began to unravel the complexities of vitamins, minerals, and macronutrients. This led to dietary recommendations, the fortification of foods, and a public discourse around healthy eating, influencing consumer choices and culinary trends. The advent of widespread electricity in homes was perhaps the most significant technological game-changer. The rise of foodie culture, fueled by celebrity chefs, cooking shows, and food blogs, has elevated cooking from a mere necessity to a celebrated art form and hobby. While many still cherish the slow, comforting process of traditional cooking, others embrace the speed and efficiency offered by advanced appliances and pre-prepared ingredients. The diversity of culinary choices is staggering, from authentic regional dishes to inventive fusion creations. Fine dining continued to evolve, pushing boundaries with molecular gastronomy and innovative techniques. Imagine the freedom these appliances offered. No more constant tending of a fire, no more hauling ice. Food could be stored safely for longer. Ingredients could be mixed with unprecedented efficiency, and meals could be cooked in a fraction of the time. This convenience profoundly altered domestic routines and expectations about cooking. The two world wars, ironically, spurred further innovation in food processing and preservation. Rationing during wartime led to the development of new ways to stretch ingredients and create palatable meals from limited resources. The demand for lightweight, durable, and long-lasting food for soldiers led to advancements in dehydrated foods, instant mixes, and improved canning techniques. Post-war prosperity in many Western countries, coupled with the rise of supermarkets, transformed food access. The rise of global transportation, container ships, air freight made international trade in food commonplace. The mid-20th century also saw a growing awareness of nutrition and diet. The late 20th and early 21st centuries have been characterized by several major culinary trends. The increasing concern for sustainability, ethical sourcing, and organic produce has shaped consumer demand. The modern kitchen is a fascinating blend of tradition and technology. Looking back, the journey of how people learned to cook for the first time is a testament to human ingenuity, adaptability, and an enduring drive to improve our lives. Chapter 11: The Rise of Industrial Food Production and the Homogenized Palate. The mid-20th century marked a profound shift from home-centric cooking to an era increasingly dominated by industrial food production. The post-World War II boom, coupled with advances in chemistry and engineering, led to an explosion of processed foods designed for convenience, affordability, and shelf stability. But an increasing array of frozen dinners, pre-cut vegetables, and ready-to-bake items. The supermarket aisles swelled with canned goods, boxed mixes, and instant everything. Instant coffee, instant mashed potatoes, instant desserts. Food companies, armed with powerful marketing campaigns, promised liberation from the drudgery of the kitchen, particularly for women entering the workforce. Imagine a typical American kitchen in the 1950s, the refrigerator. Now a standard appliance, held not just fresh produce recipes, once passed down through generations, or found in community cookbooks, were increasingly printed on the back of food boxes or in magazines, encouraging the use of specific brand name products. Clarence Birdseye's innovations in flash freezing in the early 20th century came to fruition, making frozen vegetables, fruits, and entire TV dinners staples in homes. Many consumers knew little about how their food was grown, processed, or assembled. The focus shifted from cooking from scratch to assembling meals from pre-made components. These products offered unparalleled convenience, allowing families to put meals on the table quickly with minimal effort. Monocultures, heavy use of pesticides, and concentrated animal feeding operations became more common, laying the groundwork for future concerns about environmental impact and food quality. This era saw the widespread adoption of freezing technologies on an industrial scale. Traditional cooking skills, passed down through families, sometimes waned as reliance on pre-made foods grew. However, this uniformity was not without its critics, and the seeds of a counter-movement celebrating authenticity and scratch cooking were already being sown. The science of food additives also boomed. Preservatives, artificial colors, flavor enhancers, and stabilizers became common in processed foods, designed to extend shelf life, improve appearance, and create consistent taste profiles. While these additives ensured uniformity and prevented spoilage, they also contributed to a growing homogenization of taste. A chicken noodle soup from one brand might taste remarkably similar to another, regardless of subtle regional variations that might have existed in homemade versions. Fast food emerged as a dominant force. McDonald's, with its standardized menu and efficient assembly line approach, epitomized this trend. Eating out was no longer just for special occasions or fine dining. It became a quick, accessible option for everyday meals. The focus was on speed, consistency, and low cost, further shaping public expectations about food preparation and consumption. The advertising industry played a crucial role, often depicting happy families enjoying effortless meals prepared with packaged ingredients. While this era brought undeniable convenience and addressed food scarcity issues that plagued earlier centuries, It also led to a gradual disconnect from the origins of food. This period also saw the rise of large-scale industrial agriculture, often prioritizing yield and efficiency over biodiversity and local ecosystems. Despite the convenience, there was a subtle loss of culinary diversity and regional distinctiveness in many parts of the Western world. Chapter 12. The Back to Basics movement and the rise of food culture. As the conveniences of industrial food settled into daily life, a countercurrent began to emerge, particularly in Western societies. People began questioning ingredients they couldn't pronounce on food labels. This period saw a renewed appreciation for cooking from scratch, using fresh, whole ingredients. Cookbooks became bestsellers, and food magazines offered glossy pages of aspirational dishes. Though initially a niche market, its principles resonated with a growing segment of the population concerned about environmental impact and food safety. While convenience was still valued, there was also a demand for appliances that facilitated more adventurous cooking. Food processors, blenders, and stand mixers became essential tools for preparing complex dishes, empowering home cooks to tackle recipes that might have been too labor-intensive before. Julia Child, with her groundbreaking television show, The French Chef, which debuted in the 1960s, but gained immense popularity in the 70s and beyond, inspired millions to brave complex French recipes, emphasizing technique and the joy of hands-on cooking. It fostered a deeper appreciation for the craft of cooking, transforming it from a chore into a source of pleasure and creative expression. This period laid the crucial groundwork for the diverse, health-conscious, and globally influenced food landscape of today. Chefs like Wolfgang Puck pioneered California cuisine, emphasizing fresh, local ingredients and fusion flavors. This elevated the dining experience, making it a form of entertainment and cultural exploration. And global cuisines sparked a back-to-basics movement that laid the groundwork for modern food culture. Imagine the shift. From the homogeneous supermarket aisle, consumers started seeking out farmers markets and specialty stores. As travel became more accessible and immigration patterns shifted, Americans and Europeans were introduced to the diverse flavors of Asia, Latin America, and Africa on a wider scale. Chinese, Indian, Mexican, and later Thai and Vietnamese restaurants became commonplace, introducing new ingredients like lemongrass, fish sauce, and various chili pastes to the Western palate. This led to increased interest in vegetarianism and eventually veganism, focusing on plant-based diets for both health and ethical reasons. The rise of health food stores provided alternatives to conventional supermarkets. People, inspired by these restaurant experiences, began experimenting with these foreign ingredients in their own kitchens. The concept of foodie began to take shape. Food was no longer just sustenance. Concerns about health and wellness also spurred dietary shifts. The link between diet and chronic diseases, while still being researched, started to gain public attention. Organic farming emerged as a significant movement, advocating for cultivation without synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. Technological advancements in the kitchen continued, but with a different focus. The restaurant industry itself underwent a revolution. Chefs began to gain celebrity status, moving beyond the anonymity of the kitchen to become public figures. The Back to Basics movement wasn't just about rejecting processed foods. It was about reclaiming connection to food, its origins, its preparation, and its cultural significance. Chapter 13: The Molecular Gastronomy Era and the Science of Flavor. As the 20th century drew to a close and the new millennium began, a radical shift in high-end culinary arts emerged. Molecular gastronomy. This movement was less about specific ingredients and more about applying scientific principles to cooking, understanding the physical and chemical transformations of food, and pushing the boundaries of taste, texture, and presentation. Imagine a kitchen where chefs aren't just cooking, they're experimenting like scientists. This wasn't about adding chemicals to food. It was about using natural ingredients in innovative ways, often leveraging specialized equipment and techniques borrowed from laboratories. A dish might look like one thing, but tastes entirely different, playing with expectations and memory. Proponents hailed it as an exciting evolution, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in the kitchen and elevating cooking to a true art form, rooted in scientific understanding. The emphasis on understanding ingredients, precise temperature control, and the importance of texture became more prevalent. Cookbooks and cooking shows began to explore concepts like the Maillard reaction, emulsification, and enzymatic browning in a more accessible way. It was about deconstruction and reconstruction, isolating flavors and reassembling them in novel ways. Foams and espumas, created using lecithin or other emulsifiers and a cream whipper, produce light, airy foams from almost any liquid, adding delicate textures and concentrated flavors like beetroot foam or mushroom foam. It pushed chefs to think differently about food, to understand its components on a deeper level, and to innovate with boldness. It democratized some advanced techniques and instilled a scientific curiosity that continues to influence culinary development today. It was a period where the kitchen truly became a laboratory, yielding astonishing and often delicious results. Sous vide cooking, another technique, involves cooking food in a precisely temperature-controlled water bath, often vacuum-sealed, ensuring perfectly even cooking, incredible tenderness, and maximum flavor retention. This technique, once exclusive to high-end restaurants, has gradually become more accessible to home cooks. More culinary schools opened, and aspiring chefs sought training in these new techniques. The media's fascination with food science meant that the public became more aware of the intricate processes that transform raw ingredients into delicious meals. Liquid nitrogen is used for instant freezing, creating unique textures like powders, or for dramatic culinary presentations, instantly transforming ingredients. Finally, transglutaminase, often called meat glue, is an enzyme used to bind pieces of meat or fish together, allowing for creative shaping and utilization of otherwise unused cuts. Chefs like Ferran of El Bulli in Spain, Heston Blumenthal of the Fat Duck in the UK, and Grant Achatz of Alinea in the US became pioneers of this avant-garde approach. Key techniques of molecular gastronomy included spherification, which uses calcium chloride and sodium alginate to create liquid-filled caviar or yolks that burst in the mouth, delivering intense bursts of flavor, such as balsamic vinegar spheres or olive oil spheres. The philosophy behind molecular gastronomy was to challenge diners' perceptions, creating unexpected sensory experiences. This movement sparked intense debate within the culinary world. Critics argued it was overly intellectual, sacrificing warmth and comfort for novelty. Beyond the high-end restaurants, the principles of molecular gastronomy subtly began to influence mainstream cooking. The era also saw a surge in culinary education and the professionalization of the chef. While molecular gastronomy itself might have peaked in its most extreme forms, its legacy is undeniable. Chapter 14: The Local Food Movement and the Return to Roots. In stark contrast to the globalized supermarket and the scientific precision of molecular gastronomy, the turn of the millennium witnessed a powerful resurgence of interest in local food systems. This movement, often termed farm-to-table or simply eating local, emphasized sourcing ingredients from nearby producers, fostering community, and minimizing environmental impact. This was a core tenet of the local food movement. It wasn't just about freshness. It was about transparency, knowing where your food came from, and supporting small, independent farmers. The connection between producer and consumer, largely severed by industrial agriculture, began to be re-established. Members would pay an upfront fee to receive a weekly box of seasonal produce, fostering a direct relationship with the farm and a deeper understanding of agricultural cycles. Small-batched cheesemakers, craft breweries, and independent butchers gained popularity, offering alternatives to mass-produced goods. The emphasis was on quality, craftsmanship, and traditional methods. Imagine a bustling farmers market every weekend, where consumers can directly interact with the people who grow their food, and even small fruit trees, driven by a desire for fresh produce and a connection to the growing process. This provided a hands-on way to understand food from seed to plate. Key drivers of this movement included environmental concerns, as growing awareness of carbon footprints, pesticide use, and the impact of long-distance food transportation spurred a desire for more sustainable food choices. It has pushed for greater transparency in the food system, revitalized local economies, and encouraged a more mindful approach to eating. It represents a powerful return to the roots of food, emphasizing connection, community, and the simple pleasure of fresh, seasonal ingredients. Online directories of farmers markets, local farms, and food co-ops made it easier for people to find local sources. Social media platforms allowed for quick dissemination of information about seasonal availability and community food events. Many fine dining establishments proudly listed their local suppliers on their menus, highlighting the provenance of their ingredients. This trend quickly trickled down to more casual eateries and eventually influenced home cooking, with an emphasis on seasonality and using ingredients at their freshest. Buying local reduced food miles and supported environmentally friendly farming practices. Health and freshness were also paramount, with locally grown produce, often picked at the peak of ripeness, perceived as fresher, more flavorful, and potentially more nutritious due to shorter transit times. Economic support for local communities was another factor, as consumers increasingly wanted to support their local economies and ensure the viability of small family farms. Finally, a desire for authenticity and terroir led to a growing appreciation for the unique characteristics of food shaped by its specific environment, whether it was a particular variety of apple grown in a certain region or cheese made from the milk of cows grazing on specific pastures. Restaurants were at the forefront of the farm-to-table movement, the rise of community-supported agriculture. Programs became a popular way for consumers to directly invest in local farms. Beyond fruits and vegetables, the local food movement extended to local meat, dairy, and artisanal products. Home gardening also experienced a resurgence. People, even those in urban environments, began cultivating their own herbs, vegetables, the internet played a crucial role in connecting consumers with local producers. While the local food movement sometimes faced criticism for its perceived elitism or higher cost, its impact on the culinary landscape is undeniable. Chapter 15: The Digital Kitchen and the Democratization of Cooking. The 21st century has firmly established the digital revolution as a paramount force in how we learn, share, and experience food. The internet, smart devices, and social media have collectively democratized culinary knowledge, making one's exclusive recipes and techniques accessible to anyone with an online connection. A step-by-step video for a complex dish or a recipe pulled from a popular food blog. This has made it incredibly easy for home cooks to find inspiration, adapt dishes, and troubleshoot culinary challenges. Home cooks are more confident trying new cuisines, adapting recipes, and sharing their creations with online communities. The sheer volume of information can be overwhelming, and distinguishing reliable sources from misinformation can be difficult. It has empowered individuals, fostered global connections through food, and transformed the very act of cooking into a more interactive, accessible, and often public experience. The journey of how people learned to cook now includes a vast, interconnected digital landscape where culinary knowledge is constantly being created, shared, and evolved. The focus on visual presentation in social media can sometimes overshadow the actual taste or nutritional value of food. It has also led to a greater appreciation for diversity in food, as global culinary traditions are just a click away. Video tutorials on platforms like YouTube have become invaluable resources for visual learners, with chefs and home cooks alike sharing detailed videos on techniques from knife skills to bread baking. Social media serves as a culinary hub, with Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest offering visual feasts of food photography and short-form cooking videos, shaping trends and inspiring new culinary adventures. Smart kitchen appliances, part of the Internet of Things, are becoming common, with smart ovens that can be controlled remotely and refrigerators that suggest recipes. Meal kit delivery services, such as HelloFresh, deliver pre-portioned ingredients and recipes directly to consumers' doors, combining convenience with the satisfaction of cooking from scratch. Online grocery shopping, with delivery or pickup options, has transformed how many people shop, while food delivery apps like Uber Eats have revolutionized the restaurant industry by bringing meals from a vast array of restaurants directly to homes. The physical cookbook, while still cherished, now competes with a vast, ever-expanding online library of culinary information. Imagine the modern home cook, a smartphone or tablet perched on the counter, streaming a cooking demonstration from a celebrity chef. Key aspects of the digital kitchen include online recipes and food blogs, such as websites like Allrecipes and Epicurious, along with countless personal food blogs offering millions of recipes, often with user reviews, photos, and tips. The digital kitchen has fostered an unprecedented level of culinary experimentation. However, the digital kitchen also presents challenges. Despite these nuances, the digital kitchen represents a powerful force for culinary change. Chapter 16: The Craft, Food, and Drink Renaissance. In parallel with the digital revolution and the local food movement, the 21st century has witnessed a vibrant craft, food, and drink renaissance. This trend signifies a strong consumer desire for artisanal, small-batch, and often hyper-local products, emphasizing quality, tradition, and unique flavor profiles over mass production and uniformity. This is the essence of the craft movement, a rejection of the blandness that can sometimes accompany large-scale industrial food production. Imagine walking into a specialty food shop filled with handcrafted cheeses, sourdough breads from a local bakery, small-batch chocolates, and preserves made with seasonal fruits. Key drivers and manifestations of this renaissance include the booming craft beer and spirits industry, where microbreweries and distilleries experiment with unique flavors and processes. Artisan bread and baking has seen a resurgence of sourdough and slow-fermented breads, emphasizing traditional methods. Specialty coffee has evolved into a complex sensory experience, with a focus on single-origin beans and meticulous brewing. Artisanal cheese and dairy producers have flourished, offering unique terroirs and traditional methods. There has been a significant fermented foods revival, including kimchi, kombucha, and kefir, driven by interest in unique flavors, health benefits, and ancient preservation techniques. Craft chocolatiers now focus on single-origin cacao and bean tuber production, treating chocolate as a gourmet ingredient. The movement also emphasizes provenance and narrative, as consumers increasingly want to know the story behind their food. Finally, a DIY culture has emerged, with many people learning to brew their own beer, bake sourdough, and make preserves at home. This renaissance is fueled by a desire for authenticity, quality, and often a rejection of mass-market uniformity. It celebrates the skill of the maker, the uniqueness of local ingredients, and the rich history of traditional foodways, while still often a niche market compared to industrial giants. The craft food and drink renaissance has significantly influenced mainstream culinary trends, pushing for higher quality, more diverse options, and a greater appreciation for the art of food production. It signals a desire not just to eat, but to experience and connect with our food on a deeper, more meaningful level. Chapter 17: Food as Medicine. The Wellness and Functional Food Revolution in the 21st Century. The ancient adage, "Let food be thy medicine," has experienced an unprecedented resurgence, driving a significant shift in how people view and utilize food. The Wellness and Functional Food Revolution emphasizes the direct link between diet and health, moving beyond mere calorie counting to focus on specific nutrients, bioactive compounds, and their impact on physical and mental well-being. Imagine grocery aisles filled with products touting probiotic, antioxidant, rich gluten-free, or plant-based protein. This has led to the rise of various dietary specializations, such as gluten-free, keto, paleo, vegan, low-carb, Mediterranean. It has fueled the growth of the health food industry, influenced restaurant menus to include more dietary options, and shifted home cooking towards lighter, nutrient-dense preparations. While sometimes prone to fads and misinformation, the food as medicine movement reflects a deeper societal desire to harness the power of food for overall well-being, moving towards a more proactive and preventative approach to health through the plate. And flexitarian diets, each with specific culinary implications and driving innovation in food product development. A major breakthrough has been the focus on gut health, leading to a surge in interest in probiotic-rich foods like yogurt, kefir, and kombucha. The power of plant-based eating has also seen a mainstream shift, with an explosion in the market for plant-based meat and dairy alternatives. Superfoods and functional ingredients like kale, blueberries, and turmeric are celebrated for their high nutrient density. Beyond restrictive diets, there's a growing emphasis on mindful eating, encouraging individuals to pay attention to their body's hunger and fullness cues. Finally, the rise of supplements and fortified foods, as well as emerging trends in personalized nutrition based on genetics and microbiome analysis, reflect the broader food as medicine philosophy. This is the landscape of the functional food movement, where ingredients are chosen not just for taste or sustenance, but for their perceived health benefits. Key aspects and influences of this revolution include ongoing scientific research and dietary guidelines, which increasingly highlight the role of diet in preventing and managing chronic diseases. This revolution has profoundly impacted how people shop, cook, and eat, characterized by an unprecedented intermingling of ingredients, techniques, and flavors from every corner of the world. This era of the global palate is defined by the widespread acceptance and creative experimentation of fusion cuisine. This is the reality of fusion cuisine, a deliberate and often innovative combination of elements from different culinary traditions to create something entirely new and exciting. Imagine sitting down to a meal that seamlessly blends the spicy kick of Korean kimchi with the creamy richness of Italian risotto, or a taco filled with vibrant Indian spices. It requires a deep understanding of the individual cuisines being fused to ensure harmony and avoid simply creating a chaotic mix of flavors. The global palate is a testament to humanity's endless curiosity, its willingness to explore, and its innate desire for new and exciting tastes. Today, cooking is truly a global conversation, where ideas and flavors transcend borders, continuously enriching our shared culinary heritage. Key factors contributing to the global palate and the rise of fusion cuisine include the ease of travel and immigration, which mean people are regularly exposed to diverse cuisines and bring them to new lands. Global supply chains efficiently deliver ingredients from around the world, making exotic items commonplace. Digital connectivity through the internet and social media acts as a powerful engine for culinary exchange, allowing recipes and trends to go viral instantly. Chef creativity and innovation, especially in multicultural environments, push boundaries by exploring how different culinary philosophies, flavor profiles, and textures can harmonize. The breakdown of traditional culinary silos means younger generations are less bound by strict rules and are open to new flavor combinations. Ultimately, fusion cuisine is a reflection of cultural exchange and appreciation, celebrating the richness that comes from blending traditions. Examples of fusion cuisine are numerous, from Tex-Mex and Asian Latin fusion to Mediterranean Middle Eastern blends and modern American cuisine, which embraces elements from virtually any global tradition. Fusion cuisine can take many forms, from subtle incorporation of a single ingredient or spice into a familiar dish, to radical deconstruction and reassembly of culinary concepts. While some purists might view fusion as a dilution of authentic traditions, its proponents see it as a vibrant expression of cultural fluidity and culinary evolution. Chapter 19: The Ethical Plate, Sustainability and Conscious Consumption. As our understanding of food production and its global impact deepens, a profound shift towards the ethical plate has emerged. This movement extends beyond personal health to encompass the environmental, social, and animal welfare implications of our food choices. driving a demand for more sustainable and conscious consumption. Imagine choosing ingredients not just for taste or price, but for their story, how they were grown, their impact on the planet, and the fairness of their production. Animal welfare is a significant concern, driving demand for free-range and humanely raised products, as well as contributing to the rise of veganism and sustainable seafood and certified ingredients. Incorporating more plant-based meals and reducing food waste, supporting restaurants with ethical sourcing, and engaging in advocacy for sustainable food policies. Social justice and fair trade are also critical, with consumers increasingly asking about fair wages and safe working conditions for food producers, exemplified by fair trade certifications. Addressing food deserts and food security also falls under this umbrella, promoting equitable access to nutritious food. This is the essence of the ethical plate, a move towards greater responsibility in what and how we eat. Key aspects and influences of this movement include environmental impact, with growing awareness of agriculture's contribution to climate change, water scarcity, and biodiversity loss, leading to increased interest in plant-based diets and reduced meat consumption. The ethical plate influences every aspect of cooking, prioritizing local, organic, seasonal. It moves beyond individual gratification to embrace a holistic view of food's impact on the planet, its people, and its animals. The act of cooking and eating becomes a conscious decision, a statement of values, and a direct contribution to a more just and sustainable world. While adopting an entirely ethical plate can be complex and sometimes costly, the movement represents a powerful evolution in how humanity thinks about food. Chapter 20: The Future of Food, Technology, Personalization, and Beyond. The culinary journey continues at an unprecedented pace, driven by emerging technologies, deepening scientific understanding, and shifting societal values. The future of how people learn to cook and interact with food promises to be even more personalized, technologically advanced, and potentially radically different. Imagine a kitchen where AI assists with meal planning. Ingredients are grown in vertical farms in your city, and your diet is precisely tailored to your unique biology. The development of lab-grown meat and a wider array of alternative proteins from sources like fungi or algae will offer sustainable and ethical alternatives. Vertical farming and urban agriculture will become increasingly common, allowing fresh produce to be grown year-round, close to consumers. 3D food printing holds potential for intricate designs and personalized nutrient formulations. AI and robotics will increasingly assist in the kitchen with meal planning, optimizing cooking techniques, and even performing precise tasks. Predictive food analytics will use AI to analyze inventory and minimize waste. Hyper-personalized recipe generation will create entirely new recipes based on individual preferences. Advanced ingredient sourcing and traceability, using technologies like blockchain, will provide unprecedented transparency. The democratization of complex techniques will make advanced culinary skills more accessible to home cooks through AI-powered tools. Finally, sensory and flavor AI will be used to analyze and replicate flavor profiles, assisting in the creation of new products and custom taste experiences. This is the trajectory of the future of food. Key trends and potential developments include advanced, personalized nutrition, which will leverage genetic profiling and real-time biometric monitoring to to create hyper-specific dietary recommendations and even generate personalized recipes. It will fundamentally alter how new generations learn to cook, fostering an unprecedented era of culinary exploration and innovation. While the human element of passion, creativity, and the joy of sharing food will undoubtedly remain central to cooking, the integration of AI and advanced technologies promises to make the act of cooking more efficient, precise, personalized, and accessible than ever before. Chapter 21: The Revival of Ancient Grains and Heritage Foods in Recent Years. A distinct counter-movement to the industrial homogenization of food has gained significant traction. The revival of ancient grains and heritage foods. This trend represents a conscious effort to rediscover, cultivate, and incorporate ingredients that have largely been sidelined by modern agricultural practices focused on high-yield monocultures, or a meal featuring a vibrant, multicolored heirloom tomato that tastes nothing like its uniformly red supermarket counterpart. Flavor and texture are paramount, with heritage varieties often boasting more complex and intense tastes. The movement also promotes biodiversity and sustainability, strengthening agricultural resilience by relying on a wider range of crops. Culinary versatility is enhanced as chefs and home cooks experiment with these rediscovered ingredients. A deep connection to history and culture is fostered through consuming these traditional foods. This revival also serves as a resistance to the dominance of monocultures, which have displaced thousands of traditional varieties. Seed saving and preservation efforts are crucial to ensuring these valuable genetic resources are not lost. Finally, increasing consumer demand, driven by health consciousness, actively seeks out these unique and superior alternatives to mainstream options. This movement is about reclaiming culinary diversity and appreciating the rich genetic heritage of our food sources. Imagine a loaf of bread made not just from standard wheat, but from einkorn or emmer, ancient grains with distinct nutty flavors and different nutritional profiles. Key drivers and aspects of this revival include nutritional benefits, as many ancient grains, like quinoa and farro, are celebrated for their higher protein and unique fiber. The revival of ancient grains and heritage foods is not just a passing fad. It represents a fundamental shift in how we value our food. It's a recognition that culinary richness is tied to genetic diversity, and that sometimes the path forward in cooking involves looking back to the wisdom and bounty of our ancestors. It promises a future where our plates are not only nutritious, but also bursting with unique flavors and stories. Chapter 22: The Zero-Waste Kitchen and Resourcefulness in Cooking as Environmental Consciousness Grows. The concept of the zero-waste kitchen has emerged as a significant culinary trend, emphasizing resourcefulness, minimizing food waste, and maximizing the utility of every ingredient. This movement harks back to ancestral practices where every part of an animal or plant was used, driven by necessity rather than ideology. This is the heart of the zero-waste philosophy, turning potential waste into culinary gold. Imagine a kitchen where vegetable scraps become flavorful broths, stale bread transforms into delicious croutons, and fruit peels are candied or infused. By learning to utilize every part of an ingredient, cooks often discover new textures and flavors they would have otherwise missed. It encourages creativity and a deeper connection to food. Key practices and principles of the zero-waste kitchen include root-to-stem and nose-to-tail cooking, which means utilizing every edible part of a plant or animal. It underscores the idea that truly good cooking is not just about what you create, but how mindfully and sustainably you do it. Batch cooking and meal planning help prevent overpurchasing and ensure ingredients are used before they spoil. Creative leftover transformation encourages turning old meals into entirely new dishes. Composting diverts inedible food scraps from landfills. Smart storage techniques extend shelf life, while making stocks and broths from vegetable scraps and bones prevents these items from being discarded. Fermentation and pickling can salvage produce nearing its end of life, transforming it into new ingredients. The movement also involves reviving forgotten foods, such as using radish greens for pesto, and promoting mindful consumption to reduce overall food waste. The zero-waste kitchen is not just about environmentalism. It's about resourcefulness, frugality, and enhanced flavor. This movement represents a return to the resourcefulness that defined earlier generations of cooks, adapting it for modern sensibilities and environmental imperatives. Chapter 23: The Comfort Food Resurgence and Culinary. Nostalgia in an increasingly fast-paced and technologically driven world. The 21st century has also witnessed a significant comfort food resurgence and a deepening appreciation for culinary nostalgia. This trend is about more than just taste. It's about emotional connection, memories, and the soothing power of familiar flavors. Imagine the aroma of freshly baked cookies that transport you back to childhood, or a hearty stew that evokes memories of family gatherings. Comfort food also offers a strong connection to heritage and identity, linking individuals to family traditions and cultural backgrounds. It provides a return to simple pleasures, contrasting with complex and experimental cuisines. Social media plays a significant role, with platforms like Instagram filled with images of comforting dishes that spark nostalgia. Restaurant trends also reflect this, with a growing number of establishments specializing in elevated comfort food. The recent baking boom, particularly during the pandemic, highlighted the therapeutic comfort found in activities like making sourdough bread. Finally, the exploration of cross-cultural comfort foods, such as Japanese ramen or Indian curries, reveals universal human experiences through food, leading to new interpretations of classic dishes. Comfort food is deeply personal, often tied to one's cultural heritage and personal history, offering a sense of warmth, security, and belonging. Key aspects and influences of this trend include escapism and stress relief, as people naturally gravitate towards the familiar and comforting in uncertain times. The comfort food resurgence is a testament to the enduring power of food as an emotional anchor. It's a reminder that beyond nutrition and culinary innovation, cooking serves a fundamental human need for connection, solace, and the joyous remembrance of times past. It ensures that while the culinary world constantly evolves, the warmth of home-cooked favorites will always remain at its heart. Chapter 24: The Global Stage of Culinary Competitions and Media. The 21st century has propelled cooking from the confines of the kitchen to the dazzling lights of a global stage, fueled by the explosion of culinary competitions and pervasive food media. This transformation has elevated chefs to celebrity status, popularized complex techniques, and ignited a widespread fascination with the art and drama of food preparation. This is the reality brought by shows like MasterChef, Top Chef, and The Great British Bake Off, which have captivated audiences worldwide. Culinary competitions have democratized the viewing of professional cooking, making it accessible and entertaining while introducing diverse ingredients and techniques. Food documentaries and travelogues offer deeper insights into food cultures and their social contexts. The rise of food influencers on social media platforms also shapes trends and influences dining choices. Food media, particularly cooking shows, serve an educational role by breaking down complex techniques and explaining culinary science. This increased public awareness has also impacted the restaurant industry, heightening expectations for dining experiences and encouraging chef innovation. Finally, the globalization of food trends means a dish or technique popularized on a global show can quickly become a worldwide phenomenon. Imagine a high-stakes kitchen stadium where chefs battle against the clock and each other, their every move scrutinized by judges and millions of viewers. Key aspects and influences of this trend include the rise of celebrity chefs who have become household names, showcasing their personalities and skills across various media. It has demystified the professional kitchen, celebrated culinary talent, and sparked an unprecedented public fascination with the art, science, and sheer joy of cooking. It ensures that the story of how people learned to cook will continue to unfold in the public eye, inspiring new generations of food enthusiasts. While some critics argue that the gamification of cooking can sometimes overshadow its essence, the global stage of culinary competitions and media has undeniably transformed our collective relationship with food. Chapter 25: The Future of Culinary Education and AI in the Kitchen. The trajectory of cooking education and the role of artificial intelligence are poised for transformative changes, moving beyond traditional apprenticeships and static recipe books into an era of personalized, dynamic, and hyper-efficient learning and preparation. Imagine a novice cook receiving real-time vocal feedback from an AI as they chop vegetables, or a seasoned chef fine-tuning a recipe with the help of an algorithm that analyzes flavor profiles and ingredient interactions. This is the imminent future of culinary education and the AI-powered kitchen. Key aspects of these developments include personalized AI culinary coaches that will analyze individual needs and suggest tailored recipes and techniques, offering real-time guidance. Augmented reality and virtual reality cooking simulators could allow aspiring chefs to practice complex skills in virtual environments, while AR overlays could provide real-time instructions in physical kitchens. Smart kitchens with integrated AI will become standard, with appliances that recognize ingredients and optimize cooking. Predictive food analytics will use AI to minimize waste by analyzing inventory and predicting spoilage. Automated cooking devices and robotics could handle repetitive or precise tasks, offering consistency. Hyper-personalized recipe generation will create entirely new dishes based on specific preferences and dietary needs. Advanced ingredient sourcing and traceability, using technologies like blockchain, will offer unprecedented transparency. The democratization of complex techniques will make advanced culinary skills more accessible to home cooks through AI-powered tools. Finally, sensory and flavor AI will be used to analyze and replicate taste profiles, assisting in food development. While the human element of passion, creativity, and the joy of sharing food will undoubtedly remain central to cooking, the integration of AI and advanced technologies promises to make the act of cooking more efficient. precise, personalized, and accessible than ever before. It will fundamentally alter how new generations learn to cook, fostering an unprecedented era of culinary exploration and innovation. Chapter 26: The Rise of Ethical Meat and Sustainable Seafood in the Current Culinary Landscape. The spotlight increasingly shines on the ethical implications of our protein choices, leading to a significant shift towards ethical meat and sustainable seafood. But by the farm it came from, knowing the animals were raised with dignity and minimal environmental footprint, or ordering fish at a restaurant, confident it was caught using methods that don't deplete ocean ecosystems. Consumers are learning about issues like bycatch, habitat destruction from trawling, and the depletion of certain fish stocks. This awareness has led to the popularity of seafood guides and certification programs, such as those from the Marine Stewardship Council or Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch. A growing segment of the population is willing to invest in food that aligns with their values, which help consumers make informed choices about which fish are caught or farmed responsibly. It represents a conscious consumer choice that extends beyond taste and nutrition to encompass a broader sense of responsibility. This aligns with the broader local food movement, fostering direct relationships between consumers and producers, and the well-being of animals, ensuring that how we cook and eat reflects not just our tastes, but our conscience. And organic certifications for meat, poultry, and eggs, resulting in what many perceive as a more ethical and often superior tasting product. Imagine walking into a butcher shop and being able to choose meat not just by cut. Key drivers and manifestations of this trend include a profound concern for animal welfare. The environmental impact of traditional livestock farming is another critical factor. The significant land and water use, along with greenhouse gas emissions associated with large-scale beef and dairy production, have prompted many to consider more sustainable options. This has fueled interest in regenerative agriculture, practices that aim to improve soil health, biodiversity, and carbon sequestration through holistic grazing and farming methods. Some consumers are choosing to reduce their overall meat consumption, opting for a flexitarian approach, or focusing on less resource-intensive meats like poultry or plant-based alternatives. The crisis of overfishing and destructive fishing practices has brought the concept of sustainable seafood to the forefront. The demand for ethical meat and sustainable seafood also, and humane practices than large industrial operations. This culinary shift requires education and transparency. Consumers are actively seeking information about the sourcing of their protein, leading to more detailed labeling, direct-to-consumer farm sales, and online resources. The ethical plate, particularly concerning protein, represents a maturing of our relationship with food. It acknowledges the interconnectedness of our diets with the health of the planet. Chapter 27: Hyper-Regionalism and Micro-Cuisines. While globalized trade and fusion cuisine have broadened our palates, a parallel and equally powerful culinary trend has emerged: hyper-regionalism and the celebration of micro-cuisines. This movement is a deep dive into the specific, often obscure, culinary traditions of a very localized area, emphasizing authenticity, terroir, and the unique cultural narratives embedded in specific dishes. Imagine dining at a restaurant that serves dishes inspired not just by a country, but by a single valley, a specific town, or even a particular family's recipes passed down for generations within that tiny geographic pocket. It's the idea that the unique characteristics of a place, its soil, climate, water, and local traditions, impart specific flavors and qualities to its produce, and by extension, its cuisine. Visitors seeking unique and authentic experiences are drawn to destinations that proudly showcase their specific culinary heritage. This creates economic opportunities for small-scale farmers, artisans, and local businesses, encouraging the continuation of traditional foodways. While they enable globalization, they also serve as powerful tools for sharing and celebrating niche culinary traditions. Food bloggers, documentarians, and local enthusiasts use these platforms to showcase and preserve the culinary heritage of their specific regions, reaching a global audience that appreciates these unique stories. This means a particular type of cheese from a specific mountain village, or a vegetable grown only in a certain river delta, becomes celebrated for its distinctness. It reminds us that Italian food is not one thing, but a mosaic of thousands of distinct regional and sub-regional styles, each with its own history and charm. This could involve a special type of cheese produced only in one valley, a unique curing process for meat found in a single town, or a particular method of preparing a common vegetable that is indigenous to a specific region. These specificities become the hallmarks of the micro-cuisine, but as a profound expression of culture, identity, and the enduring connection between people and their place. It ensures that the intricate tapestry of global gastronomy continues to grow richer and more detailed, honoring the unique flavors born from every corner of our planet. This is the essence of hyper-regionalism, a meticulous focus on the nuances and particularities that distinguish food from one small locale to another. Key drivers and manifestations of this trend include a profound interest in authenticity and storytelling. As food becomes more globalized, there's a counter-desire to preserve and highlight truly unique culinary identities. Each hyper-regional dish tells a story of the local environment, historical migrations, specific agricultural practices, and the ingenuity of past generations who adapted to their surroundings. They are working with local producers to revive heirloom crop varieties or traditional animal breeds that were once common but fell out of favor due to industrialization. This investigative approach brings historical authenticity to the table. The concept of terroir, traditionally applied to wine, is increasingly extended to food. Chefs and culinary researchers are actively engaged in culinary archaeology, delving into old cookbooks, local archives, and family histories to unearth forgotten recipes and techniques. This trend is often linked to sustainable tourism and local economies. The focus on micro-cuisines means celebrating specific ingredients and techniques that are unique to a particular area. The internet and social media, ironically, play a dual role here. Hyper-regionalism fosters a deeper appreciation for the immense diversity within even seemingly homogeneous national cuisines. Ultimately, the celebration of hyper-regionalism and micro-cuisines is a testament to humanity's ongoing love affair with food, not just as sustenance,